Claire never imagined her wedding day would take place beside a man in a coma. Wearing a white dress and holding a trembling pen, she stood over the hospital bed of Daniel Whitmore, a billionaire heir she barely knew, unconscious, silent, and pale as death. Just 3 days earlier, she was set to marry his younger brother Andrew. But then Andrew died in a car crash, and Claire's life was flipped upside down. Now Charles Whitmore, cold, calculating, and ruthless, was offering Claire an impossible deal. Marry his comatose son and save her dying sister's life, or walk away and watch Lily's treatment vanish. So Claire did the unthinkable. She said "I do" to a stranger who couldn't even say it back. But what if Daniel wakes up? What if he remembers nothing, or worse, remembers everything? And what if the car crash that killed Andrew wasn't an accident at all? This isn't just a love story. It's a tale of blackmail, buried secrets, in a family empire built on lies. By the time the truth is revealed, someone will lose everything. The only question is who. Watch closely, because what starts as a contract may just turn into something real. "Just sign here," Charles Whitmore said, tapping his finger firmly on the dotted line. Claire Bennett's hand trembled as she held the pen. Her heart pounded so hard it echoed louder than the hospital monitors beeping beside the man. She was about to legally marry a man in a coma. Daniel Whitmore, the eldest son of the Whitmore empire, lay still in a crisp gray suit hooked up to machines that kept him breathing. His face looked peaceful, too peaceful. Claire glanced up at Charles again, the powerful patriarch of one of Chicago's most ruthless real estate dynasties. "Do I really have to do this?" she whispered. "You know the terms," Charles replied coolly. "Without this marriage, the funding for Lily's treatment disappears. Your sister dies." 3 days ago, Claire was preparing to marry Andrew Whitmore, Daniel's younger brother. They had their entire future planned: a small wedding in Lincoln Park, an apartment they were going to renovate together, and maybe children someday. But Andrew died in a violent car crash, returning from his bachelor party. The grief had barely settled when Charles summoned Claire into his cold glass office. His proposal: marry Daniel the brother. Andrew barely spoke to, so the family fortune would remain in the hands of a married son, as stated in Charles' will. If she refused Lily, her 22-year-old sister fighting a rare leukemia would be cut off from her life-saving experimental treatment. Claire tried everything, pleading, bargaining, even threatening to go public. But Charles held all the cards. She was drowning in debt, and the clock on Lily's life was ticking fast. Now in the hospital room that smelled of antiseptic and tragedy, Claire pressed the pen to paper. The notary raised an eyebrow. Emily Carter, Daniel's neurologist, avoided eye contact. A nurse adjusted Daniel's IV as if this was just another routine. Tuesday, with a shallow breath, Claire signed. "Congratulations, Mrs. Whitmore," Charles said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Later, when everyone had gone, Claire sat alone beside Daniel. "I never wanted this," she murmured. "I don't even know you." She stood to leave when a voice startled her in the hallway. Mrs. Whitmore." It was Martha Green, the Whitmore family's longtime housekeeper. Her voice was low, almost conspiratorial. "There's something you need to know about Daniel. He's not like his father or his brother." "What do you mean?" Claire asked suddenly. Alert before the accident, Daniel was investigating Charles. Said there were things going on in the company, illegal things. He was getting too close. "You're saying Daniel's accident wasn't an accident?" Martha looked away. "I didn't say that, but you should be careful. Charles Whitmore is not the man he pretends to be." A chill ran down Claire's spine. For months, she had only known Daniel as a name, a quiet, distant brother who rarely showed up at family gatherings. Now he was her husband technically, and the key to both her sister's life and a legacy of corruption she was only beginning to glimpse. That night, Claire visited Lily in the oncology wing. Her sister was paler than ever, her smile forced. "How was it?" Lily asked softly. "Weird," Claire admitted. "It's done. You married a man in a coma, and he's your dead fiance's brother. That's insane, like something out of a Netflix drama." "I did it for you," Claire said, squeezing her hand. "Nothing else matters." Lily hesitated. "But what happens if he wakes up?" Claire had no answer. What would happen if Daniel woke up, and more importantly, what if everything Martha said was true? 3 days passed, then a week. Claire maintained appearances, visiting the hospital daily, bringing books and magazines, She didn't know if Daniel could hear her, but something guilt-hope kept her coming. Then one evening, just as she was about to leave, Dr. Carter entered the room. "He may be more aware than we think," she said, checking Daniel's monitors. "Some coma patients process sound. Your voice could be an anchor." An anchor. The idea struck something deep in Claire. That night she began reading aloud to Daniel from a magazine on sustainable architecture, his supposed passion. The next day she brought a design book. Then one afternoon she arrived with a brochure from a foundation named Horizon Project. Its logo was on a card Martha had discreetly given her inside the pamphlet. Photographs of eco-housing projects for displaced families signed by Daniel Whitmore. Claire paused. She was trained in architecture, but these designs, these causes spoke to her soul in a way Andrew's luxury condos never had. Who was Daniel Whitmore? And what secrets had he unearthed before everything went dark? Suddenly, a small movement caught her eye. She froze. Did his finger just twitch? I think he moved, she gasped. Calling out for Dr. Carter. Tests were run, monitors rechecked. It may have been involuntary, the doctor warned, but we'll keep watching. Claire stayed the whole night watching him, reading, talking, whispering, waiting. What happens when a woman marries a stranger in a coma to save her sister, only to discover that stranger might be the only man who can save them all? I'm so sorry to stop here. I truly hope you'll forgive the interruption because things are just starting to unravel. Let me ask you two questions. If you were Claire, would you have signed that marriage contract to save your sister's life? Or walked away from the Whitmore family entirely? What do you think really happened to Daniel? Was it just a tragic accident or something much darker, orchestrated from within? And hey, before you go, tell me where you watching this from. If this story got you curious, don't forget to like the video and tap that heart. It really helps us bring more stories like this to life. It had been nearly a month since Claire Bennett signed her name on that marriage certificate beside a man who'd never spoken a full sentence to her. A man who, if he woke up, might shatter everything she thought she was doing for the right reasons. But something was changing. Each time Claire read to Daniel Whitmore, she swore his heart monitor ticked slightly faster. When she spoke about her sister Lily's progress, the room felt less hollow. When she shared her dreams of designing affordable, eco-friendly housing, a barely perceptible twitch would play across his brow. Coincidence, maybe. But Claire had stopped believing in coincidences the moment Charles Whitmore walked into her life. One chilly afternoon, Claire brought a report from the Horizon Project Foundation. She had tracked it down through a scribbled note she found tucked into a book near Daniel's hospital bed. She didn't expect it to matter. But as she read aloud about a housing development in a forgotten corner of Illinois, Hope Springs community, Daniel's finger jerked. This time it wasn't subtle. Claire gasped. "Daniel, can you hear me?" She rushed to get Dr. Carter tests followed. The medical team called it a reflex. Claire wasn't so sure. Because the next morning Daniel opened his eyes just for a second, but long enough to see her. Long enough for Claire to freeze in the doorway, heart in her throat. "Stay calm," Dr. Carter advised. "These things take time. He may be disoriented. He won't remember everything. But what if he did remember? What if he remembered nothing, or worse? What if he remembered everything?" The day after Charles appeared at the hospital like a general inspecting his troops. "I need a moment with my son," he told the medical staff. Claire objected, but Charles was firm. 5 minutes, that's all." What do you think he told Daniel in that private moment? Claire waited, heart pounding. When she finally entered, Daniel looked at her like she was a puzzle missing too many pieces. Charles stood at the window, smug. "I've explained everything to him," he said smoothly. "The tragedy, the love, the secret marriage. How you left Andrew for Daniel before the accident." Claire nearly choked. "That's not true." Charles's voice cut through like a knife. "It's your word against mine. And if you push me, Lily's treatment ends instantly." For the next several days, Claire was never left alone with Daniel. Charles always lingered, reminding, reinforcing, rewriting history. But then, finally, a crack in the mask. One morning while Charles stepped out for a phone call, Daniel turned to Claire and said, voice hoarse but steady, "I don't remember you as my wife or as Andrew's fiancée, but I remember Boston, the architecture conference 3 years ago. You gave a talk on urban renewal. I was there, first row. Claire froze. That was you. He nodded. I wanted to talk to you after. But life got in the way. And just like that, something shifted. Not trust, at least not yet, but curiosity, recognition. A spark of something more real than the entire month of lies that had surrounded them. In the rehab sessions that followed, Claire and Daniel found stolen moments to speak freely. He asked what really happened. She told him the truth. About the contract, about Lily, about Charles's threat. But what stunned Daniel most wasn't the manipulation. It was the discovery that he had been on the verge of exposing his father's empire when the accident happened. He'd scheduled a meeting with an investigative journalist named Michael Lawson. The night of the crash, his brakes had failed. Was it just bad luck, or did someone make sure Daniel never made it to that meeting? Determined to dig deeper, Claire began visiting the Horizon Project office under the guise of design research. There she met passionate teams who revered Daniel not as a billionaire's heir, but as a man with vision. She found blueprints signed in his hand, photos of him breaking ground on eco-homes, awards, press releases buried by the Whitmore conglomerate. This was not the Daniel she thought she'd married. He was better, and that scared her, because for the first time, she was no longer just faking this marriage. One evening, after reading him an article about a green village Daniel had designed, she paused. "I didn't know this side of you," she whispered. "Andrew never mentioned it." Daniel blinked slowly. "He didn't know me." "Not really, he followed our father's path." "I didn't." Claire met his eyes. I want to help you finish what you started." He nodded once, "Then we do it together." But even as this new alliance formed, a question lingered unspoken, heavy. If Daniel remembered Claire from that conference years ago, could it be that he'd always wanted to find her again? And now that he had, what would he risk to keep her safe? "I'm so sorry to leave you hanging here. I promise it only gets more intense from here. Let me ask you two things before you go. Do you think Daniel will ever be able to forgive Claire for marrying him while he was unconscious, even if she did it to save her sister? If you were in Daniel's place, would you fight to expose your own father, even if it meant destroying your family legacy? Also, I'd love to know, what country are you watching from, and if this story has drawn you in, please show some love by tapping that heart and liking the video. Every bit of support helps us keep telling stories like this one. Weeks passed. Daniel's body grew stronger, his mind sharper, and so did the web of lies surrounding the Whitmore empire. Inside the mansion, Charles watched with growing tension as his once silent son began asking questions about the accident, about the Horizon Project, about Andrew. But what Charles didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that Claire and Daniel were quietly piecing everything together. Claire through her secret meetings with Michael Lawson, Daniel through fragmented memories of conversations, coded emails, and one name he hadn't spoken in years: Margaret Whitmore. His mother, she had left the Whitmore estate nearly 2 decades ago. Rumors said it was because of mental instability. The truth, she had uncovered Charles's darkest secrets and escaped before they consumed her. Daniel reached out to her using a secure number provided by Michael. When Margaret arrived in Chicago 3 days later, Charles's face drained of color. "What are you doing here?" he spat across the mansion's foyer. "I'm here to see my son," she said, steady and unshaken. "After you nearly killed him, I think I'm owed that much." In her bag, she carried a folder, thick, sealed, and damning. The documents inside painted a picture more terrifying than either Claire or Daniel had imagined. Payments to city officials, bribes, evidence that Charles had ordered the brakes on Daniel's car to be tampered with. Even letters from Andrew written days before his death, questioning their father's involvement in illegal evictions and environmental fraud. Claire's hands trembled as she read, "You think Charles killed Andrew too." Daniel looked away. He used to be the good son, the heir. But maybe he finally saw the truth. Maybe that's why he died. What would you do if you found out the man who raised you, the man you trusted, was capable of killing his own children? That night, Claire found out she was pregnant. She was carrying Daniel's child. She stood on the balcony staring into the dark city skyline, trying to decide, tell him now and risk derailing everything, or wait until justice was closer. She didn't have long to think. The next morning, Charles summoned her to his study. Here, he said coldly, handing her a check. $1 million offshore accounts. A guarantee Lily will never need another treatment again. In exchange for what leave Daniel today. Vanish and sign this non-disclosure agreement. Claire stared at the check. She had once married a man to save her sister. Could she now betray the man she loved to protect them both? Or was this the moment to finally stand her ground? That evening, Claire, Daniel, Margaret, and Michael sat in a quiet corner of a small downtown cafe. Across the table was the state attorney. Everything was ready. They filed the report that night, and as police cars surrounded the Whitmore estate, Charles realized too late that his empire had turned to dust beneath his feet. In a last act of desperation, Charles pulled a weapon from his desk. He pointed it at Daniel. But Claire was faster. She shoved Daniel aside. The shot grazed her shoulder as the police burst through the door. Screams, shouting handcuffs, and then silence. Claire lay bleeding on the floor. Daniel clutching her, whispering her name. She survived, so did their truth. 3 months later, Charles Whitmore stood trial for conspiracy, corporate fraud, and 2 counts of attempted murder. His sentence, life without parole. And on a cold, sunny morning in March, Claire gave birth to a baby girl, Sophia. As she held her daughter in her arms, Daniel leaned in and whispered, "She's the proof that love can rise from even the darkest lies." Today, the Horizon Project is no longer just a foundation, it's a movement. Claire leads the design team, Daniel works in policy reform. Together, they've returned land to displaced families and built sustainable communities across the country. 5 years later, Sophia's birthday parties are full of laughter, and light Lily, now fully recovered, reads bedtime stories while Margaret helps serve cake. Michael's still around too, a family friend with a new book coming out based on a true story. Of course. On the 5th anniversary of their marriage, Claire and Daniel sat beneath a tree in their backyard. "You know what's funny?" Claire said, resting her head on his shoulder. "All of this started because of a lie, but look at what it became." Daniel nodded. "Sometimes the most painful beginnings lead to the most honest endings." He kissed her gently. "We were never meant to find each other, but we did. And somehow, that made all the difference." I'm so sorry to interrupt the story here. I hope this journey touched something deep inside you the way it did for me while writing it. Now I want to hear from you. If you were Claire, would you have taken the money and left to protect your child, or stayed to fight? Do you believe people like Charles can ever truly be brought to justice, or do the powerful always find a way back? And tell me, what did you think of this story? If you loved it, comment no 3 below. If you thought it was just okay, hit no 2. And if it didn't work for you, that's okay too. Just comment no 1 and tell me what you change. Also, where are you watching from? I'd love to know which country you're in. And if this story moved you, please tap that heart and share the video with someone who loves stories with heart, grit, and truth. See you in the next one.